And welcome, once again, to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and you can find me on Twitter at Bob McDonald. Jimmy Lemke, who you can find at Panther U, will not be joining us today. Filling in for him is Matt Dudek.
Hey there, everybody. How we doing?
And Matt, I keep continually forgetting what is your Twitter address. It is GrizzTalkOU, correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know. I forget. I think that's right.
I should remember these things, honestly. I mean, it's been, we're not even halfway through the conference schedule, and it's been a long season already. So, but you can also follow the podcast on Twitter at HorizonRT. And apparently, I guess we're building ourselves quite a following. So that's great. Thank you all for following us and listening to us and keeping up with our varying madness week after week. So week 3 is in the books.
Done. It
is in the books, and we have ourselves a new leader coming out of the gate. At 5 with a 5-1 record. And I'm sure that and we'll talk a little bit about this later. But yeah, Detroit Mercy is 5-1 and currently a half game up on Northern Kentucky. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about the current dynamic over at Detroit Mercy, especially Matt as it relates to kind of the upcoming Metro Series game that the Titans have up against Oakland here very soon.
First one of the season for us with the men.
First one of the season, and really probably the first one in a long time that kind of means something. That seems like it's going to be a definitely must kind of watch. It definitely looks like an actual must-watch game this time around, because obviously the last couple of years have been just not good.
It depends. I disagree about not good, but I like winning.
So, speaking of which, obviously the big and of course Northern Kentucky, like I said, is a half game out of first place, but the Norse are kind of in a good position right now. Aside from the defeat that the Grizz put on Northern Kentucky a couple weeks ago. Aside from that entire deal, the Northern Kentucky definitely got a win that they needed to get against Wright State. Wright State did for all the issues that Wright State has had this season. That matchup was the game on Friday. That was a really good game. But in the end, it was Northern Kentucky wanted it more. I mean, they were able to kind of withstand the Raider onslaught and prevail. So that was definitely something, and I definitely think it was one of those things where this is, and again, the key to the game. And definitely the key to the game was near the end. At the end, Drew McDonald, who I thought probably put that game away. I thought put that game away for them.
He hit that dagger 3 right at the end there. I mean, that sealed it.
Yeah, and we made sure to point that out on the Twitter on our Twitter account too. That Drew McDonald that 3-pointer kind of sealed the deal for the Norse with Drew McDonald, and that's interesting because that was kind of the big test for them. Again, another big test, and so. Honestly, now Northern Kentucky gets to go into Ohio, where they're playing a winless Cleveland State team and a Youngstown State team, and I honestly don't think either team has an answer for Drew McDonald. Yeah, and I recognize that Northern Kentucky has a bunch of different weapons, but truthfully, Drew McDonald's kind of the one of the is from a front court standpoint very dangerous, and not to mention the fact that obviously he's got that inside out game, as evidenced by that dagger 3.
Right.
So So I don't think that. Well, I know for sure that Cleveland State's not going to have an answer for him.
Cleveland State has to hope that Appleby just goes crazy, and I mean he is capable of that. We saw it at the tournament last year.
Outstanding, but who else is there? But you got to remember last year. Not only did you have Tyree Appleby, but you also had another option. Steph Kenich was playing way better than he is now because Steph Kenich is up hot and cold this year. You also had a Kenny Carpenter who was another scoring option. I'm struggling to figure out who exactly is the solid second option for Cleveland State, especially if Tyree Appleby has a crap game, which he, by the way, did against IUPUI. Who's the second option? And I don't see it.
You're trying to find it. So's Cleveland State. They don't know, and they're living and dying by Appleby, and that's not a good way to go.
That is not a good way to go. And I've seen that, and again, I've seen that play out too. The other issue is not so much is not only does Northern Kentucky have the inside game that's going to just wreak havoc on Cleveland State. You have Drew McDonald and the rest of Drew McDonald and Jalen Tate and all those guys. They have some sharpshooters on that Northern Kentucky team, which is not good for Cleveland State, who gave up 17 against UIC on Saturday.
No, that's not.
The 3-point defense at Cleveland State is non-existent. I would say the entire defense is non-existent, but the 3-point defense was absolutely exposed. So it's not looking good. It is looking outstanding. Northern Kentucky is really well positioned to be able to put together a nice road trip in Ohio. Mm-hmm. They really are inclined to do that, and especially starting on Thursday, I really think that's going to definitely be that's definitely going to be a good. I don't want to say it's going to be definitely a nice thing for them on Thursday. Honestly, they may end up. It's just one of those things where it's like, I actually see Northern Kentucky sweeping the weekend, unless Youngstown State has something for them, and they may. I mean, Youngstown State was able to get past IUPUI on Saturday, so they may have something for them. Again, it's got to be probably something fluky that happens over the weekend for Northern Kentucky to get out of there, to not get a sweep. And honestly, I also see the same thing with Wright State. I mean, for all the issues that Wright State has had, this may also be looking like a pretty good weekend for them as well. Especially since they have a couple of options in Loudon Love and Cole Gentry, among others. So I do kind of see, I definitely see Northern Kentucky getting to a point where I think they're kind of just gearing up towards kind of the end of the season and kind of looking to kind of tweak a bunch of things that kind of befell them last year. So they're in a good position. There's no doubt about that.
I really think there's only 3 teams that match up well with Northern Kentucky at this point. Because, it's all about that inside game. And, I think Oakland proved, obviously, that they can match up. They've got the people. Yes. They've got the horses down low. They've done that. Mm-hmm. Wright State does match up. The Love-McDonald matchup is just a heavyweight fight down there.
Absolutely. And it was on Friday, definitely.
And then I think Milwaukee's the other one. And I'm not a huge Milwaukee guy, but I think Milwaukee showed that they can contain, they contained us this week with Xavier Hill-Mays down low. Yeah. Watching that, I think Milwaukee has a chance to trip up Northern Kentucky this season as well, potentially, just because, again, they match up well.
Oh, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I know Jimmy lamented about the issues that Milwaukee had last episode, and I'm sorry he's not on the podcast this week because, obviously the Panthers got a win, and I'm sure he was really happy about that part.
They pushed Xavier Hill-Mays into the worst game he's played all season. Campy was very down on him. I think X was pretty down on himself. They frustrated him. He went like 0 of 8 from the field at one point, and that's not a typical Xavier Hill-Mays night. They really did a nice job on him, and that's what it's going to take. It's the same thing that OU did to McDonald, where they didn't put X on him. They had Brad Rechting and James Beck just frustrate him all night. And McDonald still got some, but it wasn't his normal night, and that's what kept NKU from winning that game, I think. And Milwaukee, I think, can do it to them too. But I see no way that Cleveland State can match up. I see no way that Youngstown State can match up down low. And
that's
once
not
he's
their game, really. For neither Youngstown or Cleveland State, that's not their game.
No, so. And once he's rolling, it opens up the other options to hit, and that's what it's about. Is who the main guy is going to be on almost all these Horizon League teams any night. But it's about once they're going, or if they're going, who else? Who's that number 2, even number 3, and if those guys get going, then those
exactly.
It's easy to tell who's going to win that night.
Yeah, that's going to be and like I said, that's probably, and with kind of the matchup issues that both Cleveland State and Youngstown State are going to have, it's just going to be a matter of probably Drew McDonald probably putting his kind of mark on the game, and then starting to get everybody else involved. Unless of course they start raining threes right away, which is not out of the realm of possibility either.
Right.
And again, against a Cleveland State team whose 3-point defense is practically non-existent, I wouldn't doubt it.
No.
So, which actually, I'm glad you brought up the Oakland. I'm glad you brought up Oakland. Obviously, you're an Oakland guy. Obviously, you had kind of a mixed bag this weekend. You kind of touched on it a little, where you had a Milwaukee team come in and win. I was kind of surprised by that myself. But then the Grizz and then the Grizz kind of turn around. They turn around and they put it in another gear in the second half of that Green Bay game, because that Green Bay game was pretty close in the first half. But
they were down at the half.
They were. I think they were down 3 at the half.
I think they closed it to 2. I think.
Okay. Oh yeah. It was they were down 2. And then Oakland just went off on that second half, and it was. And they definitely put the hurt on Green Bay in the second half of that game, and took away that win. So that was a really good. That was honestly a pretty good game for them. I guess this, I know we talked last week a little bit about the early 3-0 start with Green Bay. This was not a good trip for them at all, in terms of the Michigan trip was not a good trip at all for them.
No, and I think that's what you saw from Green Bay is what the Michigan trip should be this year. I mean, we'll get into more of the Oakland Mercy matchup coming
Absolutely.
up, but I think Oakland has been known to have this home court advantage for a while. We have a great environment in our little gym, as everyone likes to think of it, but the team hasn't always produced. Everything else has been there. It's been the team that's been lacking, but when the team puts it together, it's an awful place to play. And if Mercy's going to play the way they're playing, that Michigan trip is not nice for the league.
So yeah, and we've seen it already. The issues early on that teams have had going up to Michigan this year. I mean, Northern Kentucky didn't get Northern Kentucky split the pair. Wright State split the pair. Green Bay didn't win anything at all. So yeah, that's gonna be I'm not looking forward to see it's going to be a very interesting dynamic with the rest of the teams who've got to go up there, and it's going to be kind of ugly actually, because I'd like to point out again with regards to specifically with the Oakland Green Bay game. And I mentioned this a couple of episodes ago, where Oakland has a dynamic where any one of those guys can go off at any given point, on any given game, which is an interesting dynamic for Oakland this year as opposed to, say, maybe years past, where they've had that one guy there who is kind of the anchor of the offense. Last year, obviously, you had Kendrick Nunn. In years past, then you had Kay Felder. But yeah, this year to me it looks like it's a lot more balanced, and you can have any one of those guys put together a good game for them.
If you go back to the fan episode at the beginning of the year, you asked me about Oakland, and I said no one knows. But what I like about this
neither
team
did
is
I.
But what I had said is I like about this team is they're going to win down low most of the time, which I'm not going to tell you I've been completely right about this. This team is shooting much better than I expected them to be. Sure. But they're winning down low, and it's spread around. There is no superstar, and that's a different thing for Oakland. But I personally like that better. I think it's more successful than having to count on Kendrick Nunn to get his, or Kay Felder. Sure. Who would have thought that Kamari Newman was going to get 33? I think he ended up with last. Yesterday.
Honestly, I probably because I think I mentioned it wasn't last episode, but it was a couple of episodes ago where I said at any point in time anybody can go off on there. It could be a Javen Cumberland one game. It could be a Xavier Hill-Mays another game. It could be a Braden Norris another game. It could be a Kamari Newman. And I am still holding out for a Brad Brechting breakout game, by the way. I am.
I love the way Brad plays. I don't know Brad Brechting. I bet you he's a wonderful person. But man, if I offered it on Twitter, Brad, if you're listening, I will donate to Oakland men's basketball charity of choice to not see Brad Brechting shoot another 3-pointer this year.
I didn't have the opportunity to see that 3-pointer, but
he shot a lot. He has shot a lot of them this year, and he had the green light for a while. He's a good 3-point shooter, actually. But if he's shooting a 3, that's leaving nobody down low, and it's just not pretty. He needs to get down low and play down low. I mean, that's what he did.
I agree with you. I think that's it. To me, I'd always thought that was his game anyway. So I
always thought so until this year, but he's been shooting a lot more, and I mean, I think a 6'11" dude down low is definitely an advantage for OU in this league, and I want to see him dominate down low. And I mean, going way back when we had Benson and Hudson down low, way back in the day, everyone would double Keto, and Keto would just throw that lob over to Hudson, and Hudson got his points that way. And I want to see more of that, just X feeding Brad down low or James Beck, both of them. And we need to see Beck finish better at the rim. But he's had a great week, at least from a fan perspective.
The Green Bay game, he pulled down 7 boards. I mean, that's he only had 4 points, but he pulled down 7 boards. So yeah, his presence was definitely felt on Saturday specifically. So that's going to be a big plus for Oakland moving forward. And you brought up something again. This is also something that is, and as we mentioned earlier, I've mentioned before, Oakland has that's Oakland's potential really, where. And they showed it early on against Northern Kentucky, where they have the ability to isolate, to be able to have an answer for Drew McDonald. So that was because they got the guys to do it.
Yeah, and I mean that's not including we've taken the red shirt off of Babatunde Suwunmi, who's still not seeing the floor a lot, but he is an option. That's another 7-foot monster we can throw out. I mean, I don't know what he weighs, like 260, 270. He's a big guy, still learning the game a bit. He's one of those international guys that didn't play basketball until he was much older, so he's still learning the game. But man, he's a big fella.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to him because as I understand it correctly, he does, as I recall, I do believe he follows the show. He follows the show on Twitter. So shout out to you, Babatunde. We're looking for a big game for you too at some point.
Probably not this year, and that's okay, but it's coming.
Well, it doesn't really need to, honestly. I mean, he's actually in a very good position where you have the guys already up front who are kind of he's got the Greg Camp. He's got the guys up front where he can throw them out there, and Babatunde can go in and kind of really, he can learn the game really, and probably in the best possible environment at this moment in time.
Right. I personally was very surprised, kind of shocked. I'm not the coach; it's not my call. I'm surprised to have seen the red shirt come off this year, but hey, I'm sure he's got a plan. I'm sure that the Nobles disappearance is a part of that, and academics or whatever's going on there. I'm pretty sure it's academic, but
that was the other thing too that kind of surprised me. That's the other thing too, obviously, and I'm glad you brought up the Nobles issues, because obviously that could have potentially been an issue for this team in years past as well. But again, there's such a balance within on the squad this season that it really hasn't been that much of a it hasn't really been that much. It hasn't had the effect it would have in, say, years past.
What it's really done is given guys like Trey Maddox is playing. I mean, Maddox was going to be in the rotation anyway, but he's getting more minutes.
Sure.
He's actually someone to watch in the next year or two, because as he's figuring this game out, he's someone that can create his own shot, which is the one thing Oakland doesn't have on the floor right now. But he does have that ability, and he's shown it a bit. He's just learning how and when. And then Kenny Pittman also got rid of the red shirt and has been playing, seeing more minutes. He started the other day because Maddox got himself in trouble. missed like team breakfast or was late to something or both or whatever it was. So Pittman got the start. Pittman was one of the top 3-point shooters in Illinois coming out of high school last year. The kid could shoot, and it's just figuring out what his role is and when and how, and trying to make sure you don't end up at Campy's doghouse like Stan Scott. But like other than that, there's the talent is there, and those guys can all shoot.
Yeah, and they proved it against Green Bay. I mean, they shot for 55. They shot for 55% and 45 from the three beyond the arc.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is a huge advantage. That's going to be a huge advantage moving. And again, a huge advantage for a team that, let's face it, neither of us had any idea what we were in for this season.
I told you I liked them. I told you, Bob.
I know you did. I was still on the fence, and maybe it's because of I'm telling you, maybe I'm pretty sure the non-conference screwed me up bad. I'm telling you, it really did. But now we see it. Now we see, now we see the method to everyone's madness. Now, apparently, not just Oakland, but obviously, so too Detroit. This is and. It's that overriding theme once again of this overriding theme that we've been talking about throughout the season on the podcast, that you underestimate Mike Davis at your peril. I mean, and it's funny, and I have to bring this up because last episode I said that Antoine Davis, who obviously is putting together probably one of the best seasons in the league. We'll talk a little bit more about kind of where he stands with regards to that. But I mentioned the fact that I think I said it offhand last episode, where it's like, Antoine Davis is going to have an off night, and it's going to be all Josh McFawley. And what happens on Thursday? Josh McFawley goes off.
And he'd been having a rough season. I think he's still figuring out how to play off the ball a bit more and where he fits into the Antoine Davis show.
Yeah.
But he got his.
He definitely got. I was like, you got to be. I thought it was the most hilarious thing on the planet. Like, yeah, of course he. Yeah, of course he. I was. Yeah. One of those times where I'm once again actually make a correct assessment. Where I make a correct prediction when I didn't even mean to. Although half the time I've cursed everyone, so that's not helpful. Like I did with Detroit a couple months ago. But yeah, it was that Thursday game. It was kind of a the Josh McFawley Antoine Davis show. I mean, it was definitely a sight to see. I mean, it was really, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow, that is something. And also too, with that, for Detroit Mercy, again, for a team that, we pretty much all collectively, thought, this is going to be a down year for them. This is beyond anything that I could possibly think that they could have done this year. Beyond anything. I mean,
I think what they're doing is exposing how bad the league is, and I'm not supposed to say that probably,
No, but, you are correct, and I think when we talked about the hiring of Mike Davis, at the during the offseason, we had talked about kind of the way the league has been, the league is structured, and hey, you never know. Mike Davis might come in and be able to, get to a point where he actually turns things around to the point where Detroit doesn't do as bad as we think.
I expected Detroit to turn around.
5-1. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I guess I expected Detroit to turn around, and as an Oakland fan, I hate saying that, but I had it as another year or two. He needed to get some more recruits in, surround Antoine. No, he took a bunch of guys off the playground, and he's put together a team that's winning.
It's amazing. I mean, and they are. I mean, and that also, and again, that also kind of speaks to how good. I mean, how good Antoine Davis has been. I mean, I think we really underestimated how good Antoine Davis is going to be this season. I mean, that's the truth. And by the way, I also, go ahead, and it sounds like you got something.
I was just going to say, I definitely did. I mean, I knew he was good, but I mean, I took it as, another coach's son, all this.
Yeah.
It's not like he decided to not go to Duke and go to Mercy. He was coming out of Houston, he'd committed to Houston. I figured he'd be a good mid-major player, maybe an average high major player. But
I mean, not to take anything away from Houston right now, because they're sitting at 16-1 and in the AACs, and at the top of the AAC standings, and they're ranked 17th in the country. So I mean,
right.
I mean, not to take away any. I mean, whatever's going on with Kelvin Sampson and Houston, they definitely got it going on now. And so but man, I'm telling you, it has really been. I want to stop short in saying that Detroit Mercy basketball is back, but right now, I mean. Yeah, I mean, you look at an 8-10 record and say, that's really not anything to write home about literally anywhere else. But from where we thought Detroit was going to be at the beginning of the season, absolutely exceeds expectations.
I definitely didn't expect them to make the Horizon tournament, let alone be running the league right now.
Yeah, I mean. But you brought it up. I mean, it's a combination. I think it is a combination of a couple of things. It is a combination of Mike Davis being able to maximize his what he's able to do, coupled with a lot of missteps on the behalf of a lot of the rest of the Horizon League teams. You didn't expect. I really didn't expect Cleveland State to start the conference season 0-6. I mean, I said a lot during the offseason that Cleveland State was not as bad as everybody's predicting, and I'm looking like an idiot right now. But for anybody but at the same time, Detroit Mercy. The opposite is true.
No one expected this.
What's that?
Nobody expected them to be this good in league. Like no, this is good.
Absolutely not. I know. So that's I'm sure as an Oakland guy, this is definitely sending a shiver up your spine.
I'm not going in cocky on Saturday. How about that?
That will be that's probably going to be a new feeling for you.
It is. I mean. The way I see it, are we ready to talk Saturday? Are we at the time?
Yes, we are. Now, as of course we all know, and fun fact, by the way, Matt, and the very first episode of the podcast, as you recall, it was you and Carrick Jones on the podcast with Jimmy and I talking specifically about this series. Mm-hmm. So a little bit of historical reference, and we kind of. Yeah, we kind of chuckled a little bit about kind of the way things were going with Detroit at that point in time. But realistically, this is actually a Metro Series game that I think a lot of people need to be paying attention to this time around. I think this is definitely going to be one of the top games in the conference this week. And I don't think we've said that in a long time. No, and
it's going to be a good game. I don't see either team blowing this game out.
No.
Which scares me because the idea of Antoine Davis playing, down one with 5 seconds left on the clock doesn't sit so well.
No, not really. But yeah, that it is. But I think for me at least, from looking at both of these teams, looking both at Detroit Mercy and Oakland, where you have Detroit Mercy, where you know who the guy is. It's Antoine Davis. You'll have Josh McFauley as that second scoring option. I think he's finally gotten back into that role. Mm-hmm. I think the Green Bay game was kind of a wake up call for him in terms of being able to kind of get back into his groove. So you now have theoretically you now have yourself a second scoring option on top of Antoine Davis, which even before the conference season started, I didn't think was going to be. I had an idea that maybe Detroit Mercy was going to have that, but I wasn't really 100% on that one. Now I think that's definitely going to be possible. Whereas you now have where you put that up against Oakland, where Oakland has such a balanced attack right now. So that's going to be a very interesting dynamic to see on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And I really, honestly, if you have nothing better to do on Saturday, this is definitely the game you want to be paying attention to next week.
I'm going to be paying attention. That's for sure.
Yeah. But and again, it's one of the given that where we were this time last year, it's amazing that we can even say that now.
I wish we couldn't in some way. I'm torn because obviously I like winning, and I love blowing out Mercy and just being able to say there's not even a rivalry anymore. There's no series here, all those things. But I'm also excited to see a good matchup.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's going to be, and again, it's going to be, and yeah, so for Horizon League fans, it is at 2:00. So Northern Kentucky, Wright State, Youngstown State, Cleveland State, IUPUI. Milwaukee fans, your games are later on, so you don't have an excuse to not watch this game, unless of course you don't have ESPN Plus. To which I say my condolences, but whatever. I have it because I don't have a choice.
You could also come to the game. Make sure you bring a towel to knock all the dust off off the seat.
Yeah, that's
no one's sat there in a year.
Yeah, well, they better. You know what? This is a Detroit Mercy team. You probably should go. You should see up close and personal at some point if you're in the Detroit metro area. Honestly,
absolutely.
I mean, it's definitely I thought for sure that maybe Detroit Mercy was a year away, but man, it is a nice. It's going to be a pretty nice dynamic. And again, not to take anything away from Oakland either. Oakland was a big wild card for me earlier this year as well, and I think they're getting it together where they look like they got some things. It definitely looks like that Oakland had some things going for them moving forward. So one of the things I do want to point out is Greg Campy talked a little bit about the game. Talked about the game. There's a video up on Twitter of him talking about this particular matchup. He also did happen to mention the fact that Oakland was one of the first people to offer Antoine Davis, as I understand it correctly. That's what he says. He likes
to offer people that he might not get, but he's going to offer it. And he's a smart man. He knows what's up. He was all over JJ Jr. He almost pulled him, even though his dad was at Mercy at the time. I mean, he pays attention to these, especially these coaches' sons. It seems.
Yeah. He did indeed mention it because he mentioned talking to Mike Davis about Antoine, obviously, over the last year, and obviously that of course as we know, Antoine chose Houston, and then when Mike Davis took the job at Mercy, he followed his dad. He decided to join his dad here, and it's paying dividends. But the one thing that he did mention, and I wanted to talk to you about this, is that he wasn't 100% sure how exactly he was going to get. He was going to defend Antoine Davis. So I'm not sure there's a way to be able to do that, because it doesn't look like anybody's been able to do that the entire season.
I am guessing just as much as everybody else, because there's no good way to defend Antoine Davis. I'm not going to pretend there is. I'm going to guess Antoine Davis is going to see a combination of Javen Cumberland and Trey Maddox.
Okay.
I think Maddox really wants to become the lockdown defender. I think he's really figuring it out how Campy works, and he wants to become that guy. Campy's had those lockdown guys in the past.
Yes.
Even last year, Martez Walker, before he got hurt, had decided that he didn't care about scoring. He wanted to be the guy on the other team's best player. And I think Trey Maddox is starting to kind of see that opportunity. But he's also a freshman. But I think he's bigger than Davis, which will help. But he's quick.
Sure.
So I could see him on Davis. I could also see Cumberland as the junior, redshirt junior, who's been around a while, trying to contain him. I think they're going to try to keep Norris off of him. Sure. But size wise, that's actually a good matchup.
That's probably not a bad idea, because I know when that's probably not a bad idea. Norris, Braden Norris, I know he's he's kind of been ever since we got into he was pretty good in the non-conference. He's kind of been up and down during the conference schedule. I know when Oakland played Cleveland State, Tyree Appleby he had a lot of trouble against Tyree Appleby. So it's probably not a bad idea that he is not defending Antoine Davis.
I think, kind of like how Xavier Hillmays didn't defend McDonald because you didn't want him exhausted.
Yeah.
I think keeping Norris off of Davis will give Norris the chance to continue to run the offense well. And without a real backup point guard, he's got to be on the floor. That's a freshman seeing 38, 39 minutes a game, which is not what anybody expected or wanted. And he's doing a great job. But I think what you're seeing is people are aware of him now. And he's probably getting a little tired. I mean, I doubt he's played this many games, this many minutes in his basketball career. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not going to pretend to be a Braden Norris expert. But I think you're seeing a little bit of that combination with him. And, keeping him off Davis will keep him fresh to continue running the offense, which is important.
That's probably going to be the best. Yeah, that'll definitely be the best for him because, I think, as you mentioned, Greg Campy needs him to run the offense. He definitely wants to focus the defense where he wants to make sure that the defense on Antoine Davis is focused where it belongs. So that's going to be definitely. I think that's going to be a key. I'm very interested in seeing how everybody else matches up. There's also there's going to be the Josh McFawley kind of factor with Detroit Mercy. Plus, again, with Oakland, it's going to be a question of who goes off this game.
Well, and I think that's going to be
you can have anybody on that team who could do that.
I see Campy slowing the game down. He needs to. He wants to keep the ball out of Davis's hand.
He has to.
And so at that point, unless Mercy starts running their weird press defense, it's going to be a low possession, low scoring game. So if we're going to try to grind it out down low, it's going to really be Xavier Hill-Mays, I think, is going to have a good game. I don't think Detroit really has anyone to really match up with him. I mean, Blackshear's 6'11", but he hasn't really shown the ability to succeed at the Horizon level. I think he's had maybe one or two games this year, but overall I don't think he's a great low post player, and watch me regret these words in a week. But I think X is going to get his, and they're going to have to double him, and I think that's where you're going to see James Beck and Brad Brechting have to really have a good game Saturday. And Davis is going to get his again, and if somebody else, if McFawley or someone else gets going, it's going to be a tough win.
Yeah, that's gonna, it's going to be. I agree. I think it's going to be again. I think it's going to be a great matchup on Saturday. So I will definitely be paying attention to this as well as all of you should as well. Given the one last thing I wanted to ask, because we talked about Drew McDowell, we talked about Antoine Davis. Are we at a point where it's those two guys? We're having the conversation about for Horizon League Player of the Year.
Probably. I think Cohen should be mentioned as well, but I don't see the I don't know how to say it. I don't see him getting the votes needed. I think he's going to have a good season. I think he's leading a good team, but I don't think the numbers are going to quite be there. He's not going to have the wins. He's not going to have anything to back that up.
Sandy Cohen's a good player. I think as we've seen, the dynamic in Green Bay kind of works against him, because for me, I think when I see Green Bay, I see a similar kind of setup as Oakland, where any one of those guys can go off. Not just Sandy Cohen, as we saw on Saturday, where Cam Hankerson comes out of nowhere and produces specifically in the first half of that game. So I think Sandy Cohen is definitely in the conversation, but as you mentioned, because of the dynamic at the way Green Bay is set up, especially offensively, that might hurt him.
And so at that point, I think you are looking at a two-man race. Yeah. Biased as it may be, I don't think McDonald's a player of the year, because when I saw him in person, we shut him down pretty well, and he was very frustrated that game. If we can do that again, that tells me that maybe he's not a player of the year. I don't see Antoine Davis not winning both the freshman and player of the year, or newcomer, whatever we're calling it this year. Newcomer of the year. Is it freshman, newcomer? It changes, I feel like.
And, I don't know. Incidentally, and I'm glad you mentioned that, and by the way, and I had to look this up, there has never been, in the history of the Horizon League, and whatever the hell MCC or whatever the hell we were calling it before that, there has never been a player to win. There has never been a freshman who has won Player of the Year. Never.
Right.
So that would be unprecedented. For Antoine Davis to win Player of the Year. At this point in time, I do think that Drew McDonald, just based upon and again, I'm basing this on just his the way he's been Oakland aside, the Oakland game aside.
That's right.
He's been pretty consistent in terms of his performance. Again, with the Oakland game notwithstanding, where I still think he currently has the edge. But as you mentioned, we may be seeing a different. And again, we will see what happens on Saturday between Oakland and Detroit Mercy, and see kind of what game plan Campy has for Davis as well. So that's going to be. I'm very interested in seeing kind of how that all is going to shake out. But I see an argument. Obviously, right now I see Drew McDonald having the edge, but I definitely see the argument for Antoine Davis at this point, especially when you have a Detroit Mercy team that probably has way more wins than I ever expected them to, and that really means something. I think that dynamic right there is that I don't know how do you even put. How do you put a value? You can't put a value on that. You have somebody where you have a player who comes in and basically changes the dynamic not only of your team but potentially the league itself.
And I'm going to get the Valhalla, Vanguard, and Norse Nation, everybody mad at me for saying bad things about Drew McDonald. I think Drew McDonald's a great player.
Yeah.
Again, exactly. What else is new? By the way, since I've already said it, I love those guys because I love that there's another good student section and group of fans to jaw with. You don't get that anywhere else.
We've had him on the show before, and I know we'll have him on again. So shout out to the Valhalla Vanguard. Yeah, I know friends of the show. I know we get a lot of Northern Kentucky followers from them. So shout out to those guys.
But they're building something. But I think Drew McDonald actually reminds me a lot of Sandy Cohen as far as in league. He's got solid numbers and he's winning even more games. But there's nothing about him when I watch him, even against even when he has a good game, where I'm like that's a player of the year right there. I never have that thought. He's a solid piece. I think he's a really really good player. But I never he's not a superstar to me. And maybe I'm wrong. But I watch Davis. That's a superstar. Like that's a player of the year. And I hate that because I love when Mercy's so good.
Well, yeah. So. I understand. I understand completely. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close out the show. Matt, thank you very much for filling in for Jimmy this week.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry that Jimmy couldn't be here, but I'm cooler anyway, and I don't come with stone cold music, so I think that's a win.
Okay. I
always hear that the shattered glass. Like, oh, come on, Jimmy. Come on, you're better than that.
All right. Well, so you can always find us all episodes of the Horizon Roundtable on sportshacks.com, hax.com, and you can find episodes of the Horizon Roundtable wherever you find podcasts and on your Amazon and Google devices. And don't forget, we also have our YouTube channel. So wherever you want to find and listen in, you can definitely find us. So that's going to wrap it up for this week. And thanks for listening.